Today we are talking about, is your husband still talking to his affair partner? Or are there suspicions that he is still talking to the affair partner? And what do you do about it? So this is a great question. I am Beth Miller. I am the founder of the Marriage Safer program. I'm a marriage coach and I am your host here in the Infidelity support group for betrayed wives. And we are going to dive into this topic. We are going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to get some answers on what to do if you suspect that your partner, your husband, is still talking to the affair partner. And so what we want to do, like I said, is get some clarity on what we're going to do to really overcome this suspicion, these thoughts you have in your head, because it's difficult. It's difficult getting to sleep. It's difficult eating. It's difficult functioning at work, taking care of your kids when you have these thoughts. Is he still talking to her? So what do we do first? Well, the first thing we want to do is figure out what is working. What is working to relieve this notion of, are they still talking? And this could come from communication between the two of you, and maybe it's breaking down. That's why you have these suspicions. He's like, nothing's happening. Everything's fine. I'm over it. Or maybe you have boundaries in place. Like, I need to see your phone or send me the passcode. And he's not giving you the passcode. He's not showing you his phone. And then it's like behavior such as, are you suspicious because he's going to the bathroom a lot and he spends like half an hour in the bathroom? Or you walk into a room and all of a sudden he puts his phone face down on the table. Or he's just on his phone all the time and he's more on his phone than he used to be. So these suspicions then often direct you to want to set a boundary, want you to communicate, but then you're shut down. So what is working, but probably more likely what is not working? The boundaries and the communication aren't there. So what we want to do is improve communication and boundaries. And when it comes to communication, it's difficult if he's not going to own it, if he's not going to share, or you know what, maybe he really isn't talking to her. So that's what we have to figure out. What is the truth here? So in order to do that, we got to dive into your thoughts. So number one, what is working, what's not working? And most likely communication feels like it's not working and boundaries feel like it's not working. So then what are your thoughts? And when it comes to your thoughts, we often have two voices. The two voices within our head, one is like, he's still doing it. He's still talking to her. Look, he's on his phone all the time. Here's the evidence. He's coming home late. He's not as emotionally open anymore. He's still closed off. So they're still talking. So there's that voice. And then there's sometimes this other voice being like, okay, today I wake up and I am going to choose to trust him today. We had a good conversation last night. I'm going to focus on that. But then that other voice gets really loud. The one's like, uh-oh, what if he's doing it again? Be careful. And so we have to listen to these voices that are in our head. And when we can start to discern between the voices, we want to figure out which one is intuition and which one's not intuition. And the difficult thing here is when you've been betrayed and you've had the suspicions for so long that he has been cheating, your intuition is squashed. You're like, I don't know if this is intuition telling me it's happening again. Maybe I should be following this, or if it's the voice of fear. And fear is false evidence appearing real. F-E-A-R, false evidence appearing real. So we want to check in with the emotion that's associated with this thought, because that can often guide us as well. Intuition is very loving. It's very kind. It's often also very simple and short. Like if I were to ask you a question, do you want to have a cookie or an apple if you're hungry? Do you want a cookie or an apple? And often, before you're even finished answering that or asking that question, before you're done asking the question, you'll hear apple. Like, I should go have an apple or salad. But then a little bit later, tad after that, you'll be like, oh, go have a cookie. You know what? We'll have a cookie and we'll eat healthier at dinner time. So often when we ask ourselves questions, we get the answer, the intuition hit just before we hear that other voice. So we often have these two voices. Some people would describe that latter voice, as the one that wanted the cookie, as the ego. And ego isn't just this I'm the best. Ego is also there to protect you. It's there to be like, we don't want any pain. Let's just enjoy the cookie. We'll work out tomorrow. We don't need to work out today. And so that ego is also there to protect you, being like, I don't know, what if he's still talking to her? So we really want to check in with the thoughts. What voice are the thoughts coming from? Are they coming from a fearful voice? What's the emotion attached to them? And then also just checking on what suspicions am I having? What is the proof that I have? And what are my observations and our patterns? As humans, we love patterns. We want things to make sense. We want to wake up, we want to have the same breakfast, or maybe not the same breakfast, but we want them to leave for work at the same time. They come home at the same time. Their mood is similar. They go to bed, their behaviors, whether they're going to the gym, whether they're on their phones, we want to make sure that everything's adding up. When things don't add up, that's when we start to get suspicious. And it's a funny time, right? Because you're different, he's different. So your behaviors are probably also off as well. And so what used to be the norm isn't the norm anymore. So those new behaviors often make you feel like something is going on, because he might be dealing a lot with his own stuff, even though he's not sharing it. He might be plagued with guilt, shame, and his pride may be keeping him from actually open up. And that may be keeping him stuck in a very selfish state of trying to deal with his own stuff. Instead, really, he should be like doing everything he possibly can to make you feel better, but he's not capable. It's a bit of a mental health thing, right? He's just so in his own world that he can't quite open up. And that'll create different patterning too. If he's plagued with guilt and shame or whatever the emotion is, he may not be able to be himself, which will change his behavior. So back to those thoughts. What are the thoughts? What are the voices? What are they saying? What's the emotion rooted in? What are the patterns? Like what's the proof that's out there? And so with that, a lot of this is like those beliefs, like I can't trust because. So figuring out why you can't trust right now. So is he still talking to her? You're trying to figure that out. I think he's still talking to her, or maybe he is, and we can get to that in a second. But if I think he's still talking to her, is it strictly trust? And if it's trust, is it because you have some inability to want to protect your heart? You're like, I want to stay in control of this, so I need to know. I need to be on the pulse of things. A bit of an A-type personality, wanting to stay in control, and understandably so. Like your world has been rocked, so why would you not want to kind of stay in it and make sure everything's protected as best you can? So if he is still talking to her, that was kind of the other part here. If he's still talking to her, and like it's a situation that I have with like multiple of my clients, they had the affair with a coworker, and sometimes they have to continue to have this correspondence, whether it's email through work, whether it's text messaging. They sometimes have to have this dialogue, so that of course they're still talking. It's just whether they're talking about inappropriate things, whether they're crossing the lines. And sometimes in some cases they've even been friends before they were even co-workers. And so it's very difficult to, it shouldn't be difficult, like we should be able to create these boundaries, but for them to kind of toe the line between crossing the line and not crossing the line, as they are also healing themselves. So if they're still talking and having that communication, I guess we have to get really clear. And maybe that intuition voice is like, what do I need? And sometimes when we ask ourselves, what do we need? You're like, you know what? I just need to let him be. I need to stop putting so much effort into him and her because it's exhausting me. And that intuition might just tell you, you know what? I'm just going to surrender and I'm just going to work on myself. And that might be fleeting. It might be like an empowerment moment. That's your true self. And all of a sudden that fear voice is like, nope, we're not doing that. We're back into searching for things. So I guess it comes down to also like, if they are actually still talking, or you're suspicious of them still talking, we have to figure out, what are your options? Regardless, either most of the time it's stay or go. Stay in this marriage or leave. There's little baby steps in all of that. Like it's not like, okay, filing for divorce tomorrow. There's often like baby steps in there, whether it's like a trial separation or just sleeping in different rooms or less time together. But often that can drive even more distance in terms of emotional healing. But if it's something that's decided upon, that you can do that with boundaries and check-ins, that can definitely be done. So that could be a potential kind of slight trial of an exit. But if you choose to stay, actually, before I get to that, sorry, if you are going to consider the out option, I don't want you to dwell on this. This isn't something you want to focus on every single day, but if you want to consider it, I would get a piece of paper out and just 20 minutes, like jot out, these are all my options. If you were to do trial separation, if you were to move to the basement, if we were to try and like, I have the kids one night and he kind of does his own thing another night, or if he was to just actually move out or go to his sister's house, kind of write down all the logistics. And sometimes that actually helps the mind calm down. It doesn't think about leaving as often because it's like, all right, it's all on paper, it's there, and then you can just go back, add to it, but don't dwell on it, because that's the future. That's the thing here. We want to be very careful to not constantly live in the past of what happened and then live in the fear of it happening again. We really have to stay present. And so with being present, if the option is, you know what, I choose to stay, it's always today. Today, I choose to stay. You can change your mind tomorrow. You can wake up tomorrow and be like, you know what, I'm done, I'm out. As long as you're not on this roller coaster of in, out, in, out. But if that's the case, we just got to figure out what's driving that in and out. Is it the thoughts, emotions? Is it the inauthentic voice that's driving you on that roller coaster? But most of the time, the authentic voice, if it does say stay, then you stay. Today, I choose to stay. And today, I choose to surrender. I choose to surrender and just flow with my boundaries in place. And sometimes he can't meet the boundaries. He's just not willing to do so. So you still have to check in. And it's all about the energy in which you're checking in with yourself. Do I still choose to stay even though he's crossing my boundaries? He's not showing me his phone. He's not giving me the affection I need. He's not saying the things I need. He's not answering my questions. Am I still okay with staying? Because sometimes we are. You're like, you know what, from that empowered place, no, I still choose to stay. My family's important. I want to give this marriage everything I got. I know he's not answering my questions. He's not doing everything I need him to do. But from the most empowered place, I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to heal from this pain, knowing the clarity is going to come. He can do his stuff. It doesn't feel disrespectful to me because I'm doing this. I'm making the choice to stay. I'm not giving my control up to him, knowing I can wake up tomorrow and be like, you know what, I'm better than this. I'm leaving. or doing one of those little steps, right? Okay, so logically, yeah, we already checked over kind of the logical steps if you were to leave, what to do if they're still potentially talking, really figuring out what you want, and that authentic voice, asking yourself that question and deciding, do I want to surrender and really work on myself? And it's such a beautiful thing. It's amazing. Like, how did you find out about things? It may have been way longer than you would like to, but somehow you stumbled across an Apple Watch and saw all the details, or maybe you saw an email come in, or maybe you saw the phone bill records. Like, the information came to you, the proof came to you at some point. So sometimes you just have to surrender. If I meant to know something, it'll come to me. I will be led to it. And that's really powerful, because then you're like, you know what, I don't need to constantly be checking and keeping myself in that state. All right, so next, there's two pieces of the puzzle. There's you, and we've already kind of talked about that inauthentic voice, that kind of fearful voice or the distrustful voice, and then your authentic voice. And same with him. He has these voices in his head too. There's like probably your husband that was there before, and then there's this new person that you're like, I don't know if I recognize him. Or there might be the husband that's like, seems like he's getting better, but you're not 100% sure. And so he has two voices, and sometimes what led them to this is most of the time like nothing to do with you. It feels very personal. And that's when we have to check in with that too. Are you not trusting because you don't feel enough, or because you feel like a bit of a failure, like you should have done more, you should have seen the signs? But he also has this stuff going on, and mental health can be a big part of this too. And often my clients will describe it as a midlife crisis. And I have a great blog. I think it's November, December. So if you want the blog, actually, DM blog, and I'll go look for the link and I'll send it to you. So he's got this subconscious programming too, kind of a disconnect between his authentic self and his inauthentic self. And this affair was his inauthentic self, most likely seeking out that validation, wanting that affection, wanting to feel heard, wanting things to just be light and easy, and kind of forget everything that was actually probably driving him to this point. So with that said, I have, like, I could say like case study after case study, but clients whose husbands were friends with the affair partner, then become co-workers, and they still have to have this like talk back and forth, or they need to kind of have meetings together in the same place. And that can drive, like the clients, it would drive them crazy, absolutely crazy, until they got to a place where they're like, okay, the thought that keeps driving this craziness is, I think it's happening again. I think it's happening again. Instead, when we rewired that to be like, you know what, I'm in control here. I know my boundaries. If it happens again and I find out, this is what I'll do. And so we can get those thoughts under control, like parent them. Those thoughts that are driving what makes you feel like you're crazy, the ups and downs, have a lot of weight. They're heavy. What we want to do is, they're still there. It's not like we can want to completely get rid of them, because they're there. Sometimes they have a voice like, okay, I see you're concerned, but that's it. It's like a child relationship being like, okay, thought that's telling me it's still happening. Let's make you a little smaller. I'm just going to hold you and tell you everything's going to be okay. We don't want that voice to be so loud. We want to shrink the size of the voice. So I hear you. I'm going to continue on. I'm working on myself. And I have processes around hypnojourneying and reprogramming your mind so that we drive different beliefs that I am okay, I am safe, I choose to trust today. And because of that, you then have supportive thoughts of, you know what, he could be doing this, but in this moment, I choose this. And this is such a personal thing. I can't tell you to stay, to go. This really has to do with the voice within you. So with that said, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to tell you. Yeah, that clarity on whether to stay or go, like what to do with this, really comes from within. If you want some help with that voice, just let me know, figuring out what that voice is within you. I can help you out with that, because it comes down to, what do you know to be true? What do you need to know? What do you know to be true? And that comes from fear, like the false evidence appearing real. So what do you know to be true? It's a great question I always ask my clients. Another one I ask them too is, do you need to know this answer for your healing? Do you need to know this answer for your healing? So questions you want to ask them. Do I need to know that to move on? Or is that little voice that's like, could be happening again, that wants those details? So really jot those questions down, get a pen. Do I need to know this for my healing? And what do I know to be true? And when we can distill it down to that, plus hear the voice within our head, if they're talking to her or not talking to her, you'll get the clarity. Do I stay or go? Because that's really, stay or go, that's what it comes down to. What do I do? Communicate my boundaries, decide, am I okay with them not 100% meeting my boundaries? Does that still feel okay? It's all about the energy. We want to keep your vibe high. Vibe high. Have those moments of sadness. They're okay. Get your journal out, meditate, go for a long walk, bubble bath, do a hypno journey. Those are things we need to do, calm our nervous system, get us regrounded back in who we are, feeling in control, empowered, beautiful, confident, like just feeling that high vibe. That's where we want you to be. You can be in a really horrible situation and still have that control, knowing that this is a journey you're on. For some reason, it's here and you will get through it. This gift is not a gift. It's horrible, but there's something in it for you, something in it for him. And client after client, they come out better and stronger because of this. for some reason, this came and shed a lot of light on their own insecurities, their own kind of what feels like deficit or limiting beliefs within them, and they've overcome those, and they become a better person for it, better to communicate, better to show up, safe to express themselves. So this journey is some reason you're here, and I'm so sorry you're on this journey. It's not fair, it's not right, but things will be okay. You will be okay. So I'm going to leave it at that. If you want that midlife crisis blog, send me a little message, DM the word blog, and I'll send that off to you. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to DM me or put your questions below, and I'll get back to all of that. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me today on what to do if you think your husband is still talking to her or he is talking to her. All right, bye everyone.